Greetings. This is the voice of Daniel speaking to you. I come again with another teaching whose time has come. In this teaching, I will speak on the question that has puzzled many and has been asked by those whose faith in the infinite Creator has been in a state of flux as to why evil exists in the world. Let's begin with a general understanding that we are not our bodies. We are souls, individuated sparks of divine consciousness, and as souls, we are all participants in the divine experiment of duality consciousness within the creation. The fundamental principle of duality consciousness is choice, as it was in the beginning when Adam and Eve chose to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is the consequence of that choice that is still playing out within the creation experiment for all of humanity and humankind. Now then, as with any good experiment, there must be a divine plan that guides the fundamental processes of the experiment. And, as stated earlier, the objective of the experiment is to explore the principles of cause and effect, choice and consequence as an outplay of duality consciousness and the knowledge of good and evil. As stated in my earlier teaching, there can be only one choice in every moment. The consequence of that choice is the process by which we learn experientially. The playing out of the consequence of a choice can be for the individual or between many individuals who may be affected in different ways. The nature of duality consciousness allows the use of Creator's love energy by all, which, based on the choice that is made in each moment, causes the individual to gravitate towards either the positive or negative polarity of the love energy spectrum discussed in an earlier teaching, which allows for different sets of experiences based on choice to play out for the individual from which to learn and evolve over time. So, as you will see, the duality experiment is about choice and consequence, and all participants in the experiment are given the mental ability, not the free will, as many believe, to make a choice between love and fear, good and evil in every moment. I use the terms love and fear, good and evil as substitutes for the positive and negative polarity spectrum of Creator's love energy that permeates all things within the creation. These words are not ideal substitutes for the principle they represent, because our ego minds will seek to categorize the effects or consequence of a choice as either good or bad, favorable or unfavorable to the individual or group, when in truth, energy is simply a neutral, intelligent force from which the creation is made manifest. All is energy, and the way it is used and manipulated by people, based on their choices and intentions towards themselves and others, affects the outplay of the consequence and effects of those choices and intentions. It is our judgment of the outcome of the choices and actions of others that we deem them good or evil from the perspective of the outcome affecting us or another person in a negative or unfavorable way. We tend to deem the negative intentions and actions of others who choose to work in service to the self with Creator's intelligent love energy as evil, when the outcome of their intentions and actions affect us directly or some vulnerable group that we are aligned with on a moral or compassionate grounds. The perception of evil in the world is a matter of choice and intentions by those working from a negative polarity based on their negative choices, who seek to manipulate and control others via force, energy manipulation, and deception in various ways. They do this because individuals operating within this polarity are largely of service to self at the expense of others. The confusion that many have that leads them to question why evil exists in the world is a distorted perspective, because their awareness of something being evil should also engender in them the awareness that goodness also exists. For it is the awareness of both good and evil that our judgment and choice between them arise. So, why is it that people never ask the opposite question as to why God allows goodness to exist in the world? Think on this for a moment. Goodness and evil are not things like, say, for example, fire, which can be used for good or evil. Fire, as an element of creation, is neither good nor evil, it simply is, and it is polarity neutral. It is the intention and use of fire by the individual towards self or others that determines if the intention and action of the person is evil, of service to self, or good, in service to the greater good of all. Good and evil are simply energetic potentials within the creation that only become manifest when a choice is made, acted upon, and when the consequence of that choice plays out for all parties involved in whatever way it manifests. Going back to the allegorical story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, we know that the duality experiment began for man and mankind when Eve and Adam chose to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But what many fail to realize is that all evil intentions and actions are based on choice. The same choice that was made by Adam and Eve in the garden to know what good and evil were and the difference between them as part of the soul's evolution via experiencing. Both evil and goodness are two sides of the same coin because one cannot exist without the other, and together they set up the principles of choice and consequence for the individual and the collective. For choice to be possible, two options must exist between which to choose. Every soul in the creation possessed the potential for good and evil within them, because as conscious beings, we possess the ability to choose between good and evil in every moment, and to experience the effects and consequence of that choice in whatever way it plays out. It is important to note here that those who perceive and are emotionally affected by the actions of others that are deemed evil are those who are more positively polarized based on their collective intentions and actions that are mostly for the benefit of others. By having an awareness of the negative intentions and actions of others, this helps us to know who we are based on our positive polarity and our compassionate response to victims of such evil actions. How else would we know how we polarize on the love energy spectrum as either positive or negative, good or evil? Think on this for a moment. Our dominant energetic polarity is often referred to in terms of light and dark, where those people who work with love and compassion towards others are generally called light workers and are deemed positively polarized, whereas those people who manipulate and deceive out of malice and hate in service to the self are generally called dark workers collectively and are deemed negatively polarized. The dynamic that is at play in the duality experiment is that evil exists to show us who we are and who we are not based on our polarity consciousness. It is the same for those who work from the negative polarity, where the goodness of those who work from the positive polarity help the dark ones to see themselves eventually. It is our dominant polarity expressions that determine how we generally act towards ourselves and others. Based on our dominant polarity, we express intentions and actions that reflect this. Those who are dominantly polarized positive are the ones we see performing genuinely grand acts of selfless charity and compassion for others at the expense of themselves. Whereas those who are dominantly polarized negative are the ones we see intending and performing grand acts of manipulation, deception, and destruction to benefit the self at the expense of others. In all of these instances of good or evil consequences playing out in the creation and among the collective, there are lessons being taught and learned by all parties involved, as well as for those who are simply observers to these events. Now then, To answer the big question that troubles the minds of many as to why does God allow evil to exist, I will simply say this. The infinite creator does not allow evil to exist. The infinite creator allows both good and evil to exist in accordance with the original choice that was made by Adam and Eve to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because this is the playing out of the consequence of that choice within the duality experiment. Good cannot exist without evil, as that would distort the purpose of the duality experiment and remove the principles of choice and consequence and create a ruinous distortion within the creation experiment. In truth, what is called evil is simply the misuse of Creator's love energy by those who work for the general benefit of the self, and what is called good is simply the creative and compassionate use of the same love energy for the general benefit of others. This is important to contemplate because herein you will see the importance of the personal choice that people make based on their dominant positive or negative polarity consciousness. What we deem evil is based on our perception and judgment of the actions of those who work in service to the self, usually from a place of fear, because we fail to see the bigger purpose that action will have for the collective and the choices that will be made as a result of such actions. For example, people who are positively polarized may have a strong disdain for wars on the principle that it is destructive and evil, but this disdain is only based on their emotional response to such actions, failing to see that wars that are acts of self-defense may be warranted and justified for the greater good of all. This, however, does not mean or imply that war is good. It simply means that what is necessary could be perceived as evil based on our judgment of the consequence and outcome. Think on this for a moment. If everyone was able to see into the future and know in great detail what the ultimate outcome of an act we deem evil would be, we would all have a different perspective on such actions. The question of why God allows evil to exist would disappear from the minds of many, and all actions would be viewed from this higher enlightened perspective. It is ignorance of the outcome of an act we deem evil and the uncertainty for the future that caused many to question why God allowed evil to exist in the world. It is also a display of fear, doubt, and lack of faith in the divine plan and our roles in it. It is not the infinite creator who allows for evil to exist in the world. It is man and mankind that allows evil to exist and persist based on their choices, actions, and inactions. The creator exists in a state of neutrality so as not to unduly influence or taint the outcome of the duality experiment. The infinite creator allows us to make the choices that determine the outcome of our experiences. The counterbalance to evil is goodness, and those who intend to do evil are only allowed to go as far as those who intend to do good will allow. When evil is confronted with goodness, changes occur for the collective. Many who use Creator's love energy with negative intent do so with or without an awareness that there will be a need for karmic balancing in this or a future lifetime. As was stated in my earlier teaching on karma and dharma, karma is not a form of divine punishment as many would tend to believe, but is the consequence of choices made in the past that are recycled to teach and heal the parties involved in past karmic events. Despite the dynamic of the duality experiment between good and evil, there's a divine balance that ensures the experiment does not result in chaos and self-destruction. This is why, when evil seeks to dominate the collective, there is always an alliance for good that keeps it in check. In the movies, we see a recurring theme that good always triumphs over evil. There is some truth in this, because Creator's intelligent love energy is neutral, and the use and misuse of it can lead to both creative and destructive ends. It is time to evolve our understanding of the nature, principle, and polarities of the duality experiment we're a part of. Each of us came into the experiment with a role to play that we call our life purpose or life contract that is set up to facilitate the learning of other souls with whom we have a soul level agreement to have shared collective experiences, positive or negative, that will serve to teach new spiritual lessons or to heal past karma. The infinite creator allows for all possibilities to exist so that choices can be made between good and evil, and for the consequences of those choices to be experienced so that lessons are learned and souls can evolve towards a zero-point path of enlightenment that allows us to know ourselves by the fruits of our intentions and actions. It is time to release this type of questioning and blaming of Creator's will for the duality experiment in choice and consequence, and for us to become aware that it is our choices and actions that allow for evil to exist when evil acts go unchallenged by those who work for the greater good. This is what the choice to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil allows for, and we should use the wisdom shared here to see the lesson in each moment based on our individual and collective choices, actions, and their consequences. I hope this teaching brought enlightenment to the collective in response to the questions of why evil exists in the world. There's more to this teaching, but that will come forward when the time arrives to do so. I leave you now with the grace of the infinite Creator who is my judge. Please be loving and kind to each other. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for future teachings and to support the work we are doing for the upliftment of the collective consciousness. We honor you.